This is Sue Ellum from Soulfully Connecting, and I've got the great pleasure of talking to Wahido Marata again. And this time he's going to be discussing the retreats that Tony Samara holds. These are meditation, and they're all spiritual events. So, hello, Wahido. Lovely talking to you today.
Hello, Sue. Nice to be with you. Nice that you're having me. And yes, I'm very happy to speak to you again and again. Anytime.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
Yes.
Okay. Tony Samara. Can you tell us a bit about Tony Samara, and then we'll go on to his retreats and the things he does.
Sure. Tony Samara is a spiritual teacher, a spiritual master, a spiritual guide, basically. He, came into my life in the year 2001, and he basically works with people in various ways. And most people ask him for help and anything that they need help with, either spiritually, emotionally, physically, even financially. There's many ways that Tony can help, and basically he addresses people in different ways. He looks at people, he sees people, not from a mental sort of coaching type of approach, but from a deeper sense where the vision that he has can see through the person, I would say directly to one's essence, and it's a very energetic work. So it's not so much of a mental work. This is why many people, when they attend his events and retreats and workshops, feel many things and experience many things which they don't really comprehend, or it's not something that they can actually intellectualize or get into a concrete context in the mind. So his work is very specific, as I said, and it works really in different ways with people. And he has been doing this for the past 30 years or even more. And so, it's very interesting because sometimes it's amazing in both spectrums or in both ways that you want to look, meaning challenging or beautifully, harmoniously, expansively felt as an experience of love and compassion, etc. So he basically takes the practitioner or the person in the people in the workshops where they need to go. Sometimes it's not comfortable and not comfortable space, which means that people are pushed to go beyond their comfort zones. But at the same time, it's always driven towards consciousness. And Tony works a lot with discernment and with giving tools so that people can discern themselves what is best for their lives, for their moment-to-moment lifestyle. And so, this is a little bit of the tip of the iceberg of what Tony Samara does. And it's my experience, which means that might be different for other people. So this is never dogmatic. It's never like this or that. It's basically a deep, profound experience that people have when they work with him.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before on our previous interview that I'd been on a retreat with Tony. I mean, this was many years ago, 20 years ago now, in Australia. I know that Tony holds his retreats in many different places. Can you tell us how long they last and where he's actually holding them these days?
Yes, Tony has gone through many sort of models of workshops. He did 40-day retreats. He did many 4-day retreats, all about detoxification and the cleanliness of the body, the physical body, which then extends to the mind and the other parts of the body. And at the moment, he has normal events, sort of talks or lectures, where he holds the space for 2 hours or so. This happens also in places like Ljubljana in Slovenia, where he has a meditation school. And then he has other formats which are a bit longer, which happens quite often now at the moment in Portugal, in the south of Portugal, which is a 2.5-day workshop, which means they start on Friday and then they finish on Sunday. So these are the more concrete, physical, meet Tony Samara in person type of workshops. And then you have the online workshops, which happen on a daily basis. We have the daily satsangs, which are basically discourses which go beyond just physically speaking words and understanding intellectually the words, which last for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So they happen every day from the Garden of Light, which is Tony's spiritual school. And they happen at about 11 a.m. Central European time. That's about 10 o'clock on the UK and Portugal. And then we also have weekly satsangs, which is a once-in-a-week satsang, which lasts for 1 hour. It's much more in-depth, and Tony focuses on many different deeper subjects. And he receives also questions from his students and replies to the questions directly, of course, keeping the privacy of the person, so he doesn't reveal names, but he still replies in a general way so that everybody can benefit from the answer. So this is how it's been for quite a while now.
Yeah, I enjoyed the I did some of the retreats in Portugal, and I did the kind of the long kind of 2 or 3 day ones, and it was very interesting, as you said, not just on the spiritual level, but also on the physical, because it's the food is very different from what people would eat normally. It was much kind of purer or vegan, and so when I believe the daily and the weekly ones, as you said, are all online. So what about when people want to do one of the longer retreats, 2 or 3 days, or even the 40-day one? What can they expect?
Yes. So the thing is, Tony works mainly with meditation, and there is several different sort of paths that he follows. One is along Zen Buddhism, which is basically sort of his own path, because he has been in a Zen monastery, a Zen Buddhist monastery in California. So there's a lot of meditation practice, but there's also a lot of satsang, replying to questions that the students have, working with dreams. Tony works a lot with dreams, but he guides people in a meditational way and in the practice of meditation. This is the main focus, and the main thing is that the work goes beyond the mind, meaning goes beyond what the mind can understand. So sometimes it gets a bit challenging for some people, because they want to understand what's really going on. So they have perhaps physical symptoms or physical moods and emotions that they don't understand, and restless nights, or feeling a bit sort of not sure what's happening really. But then at the end there's always a closure, and there's always a deeper understanding. And it's difficult to explain how someone like Tony works, because it's like putting all the ingredients in a pot and cooking a soup, but you don't really know how the soup is going to taste at the end. You keep putting some spices, and you keep putting this, and you keep putting that, and then at the end you don't really know, and the water is boiling, and there's all this steam coming out, and then suddenly you turn off the fire, and the soup is delicious. So it's a bit how Tony works in the retreats. And there is a very strong component of detoxifying the body. He always worked with detoxifying the body. It's amazing. He, from my understanding, was one of the first people that I've met in Europe that worked with detoxifying the body. So all these detox programs that we nowadays hear about, all the supplements, all the detox preparations, tinctures, etc., that now it's becoming more and more common. Tony was doing this already 20, 30 years ago. I don't know if in the Australia retreat he did something like that, but it's something that was already introduced by him many, many years ago. So he gives detox preparations, very simple things like lemon water in the morning, or something like apple cider vinegar with honey and cayenne pepper with warm water, so simple detoxifying preparations that allow the people to process their process their processes in a more deep way and in a more direct way. So I would say that people can expect a transformative process. Many people don't know even what they're doing there, and you have experienced that. I've experienced many of his short, longer, and very long workshops, and the expectation is always the same. You go to meet Tony to meet consciousness, not him being consciousness, but him mirroring or guiding you towards consciousness. And consciousness is basically being present to the truth. So whatever is coming up is what's truthful. Sometimes truth is not a pleasant thing to look at, but it's a requirement. In order to look at truth, you need to look at truth. You need to be present. You need to be open, to be receptive. So all these things that are difficult for people to process on their daily lives are much easier on a I would say a retreat setting with Tony. And again, I think the soup is a very simple and direct way to understand the metaphor, and it's an amazing process. Basically, I've experienced many teachers. My first teacher was Osho, as you know, and I didn't have the pleasure to meet him physically, but I've worked with him in many different ways. And then I've met many teachers in Europe and in the United States, and there's nothing like Tony. It's very difficult to explain because it's an experience. It's not really intellectual one-on-one sort of equation. It's not a coaching. It's not psychology. It's not mysticism. It's everything together. It's a balance of many different things.
I think my experience is that I've been on a few with Tony. Yes, in Portugal as well as in Australia. Portugal came first because that's where I first met him. I think being on a physical retreat and the cleansing, the body cleansing, and all that kind of heightens, it clears out your body in order to make you more accessible to the spiritual side of things. That's how I felt about it, that your body wasn't heavy with maybe foods that you normally eat, because we tend to always eat what our culture dictates from childhood, and we don't think so much about the detoxing and the cleansing and stuff. It was what our parents did, so that's what we do, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I do find that it's been very interesting, and yeah, Tony kind of he doesn't so much. He allows you to be you, and then will just say something just to shift your perception a little bit. It's never aggressive. It's never, you have to do this, you have to do that, or you're not doing this right, or you're not doing that right. It's a very gentle learning by just, I suppose, by suggestion. Do you see what is that how you feel about it?
Yes, and let me just put something in between your lines, because you reminded me something very important, which is fasting. Tony always worked a lot with fasting, not just not eating. People think that sometimes fasting is just purely not eating, but he was able to integrate all the nutrients, vitamins, protein, anything that the body needs with juicing, for instance, and along with the supplements or the detox preparations. So you detoxify the body by fasting also. And so the point that you were mentioning about heaviness, the thing about being a vegetarian or not eating meat or heavy foods or more toxic foods, so to speaking, is actually to purify the body. Tony always mentions or makes us understand that karma is about removing karma implies removing the impurities of the body, and not and the being, sort of speaking, but the body more, because it's what's more dense in our being. And so vegetarianism is a way of clearing those physical impurities. I mean, it's kind of difficult nowadays not to see that eating meat or fish or poultry actually creates an imbalance in the body, not only physical but emotional, not only because of the hormones and all the antibiotics that they are given, those animals that you then eat, but it's a long digestive process, so it requires much more energy to digest. And so by removing all those physical sort of obstacles that lead you to have a better overview of what's behind all that, gives you a sense of lightness, but also removes the pathway, or opens the pathway so that you can see what's beyond it much more clearly. And so that's mainly what I wanted to say, which then leads to the question that you asked. Tony never tells you what to do. Even when people ask, please, Tony, tell me what to do, because I don't know. I'm confused. I'm in doubt. I cannot see the truth. I cannot see the truth in myself. I cannot see the truth in the others and in the world. Please tell me what to do. And Tony, it's not possible for someone like Tony to say, please do this. It's about people understanding and having the consciousness of their own steps. So, like you say, the suggestion, but it's even less than a suggestion. It's something like, perhaps the conscious way to look at things is this and this, and then it gives the student the option to look at things in a more conscious way or not. But if the student doesn't have the impurities removed more easily, then it's more difficult to see the straight path that leads to consciousness. So it's a whole work by itself. It's not like a one-day workshop and you do the visualizations and you put yourself totally into what you want to be, and you visualize who you want to be and what you want to create, and you have to believe and create, and from one day to the other you are a different person. It's much beyond that. It's much beyond a mental concept. It's a physical concept, it's an emotional concept, and it's working with all these tools that lead to consciousness. So yes, I agree with suggesting, I agree with giving the option, but I agree also with being receptive and being open, which requires much more than just going to a retreat and becoming the person that you want to be.
Yes, it's definitely not a place. It's not a place for notes and a pen and paper at all, is it?
It also is. He invites a lot of people to write, because he emphasizes that writing brings the thought more into reality, because it's not just in the mind. It's a physical thing that you can look at later and have it sink in more easily. But it's a bit beyond that, and this is where meditation comes in, and this is why many people misunderstand meditation, because they simply cannot utilize the space of meditation in their own benefit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have the issue with meditation because it was always says, well, clear your mind, and then you've really got to concentrating on clearing your mind, so you're still thinking. And maybe we'll have another talk at some stage about different forms of meditation, because I think people got this concept about it. And there's so many different schools of meditation now anyway, different ways of doing things. So has Tony got, yeah, I know that he's got the satsangs and everything. Has he got any physical retreats kind of on the cards? I mean, we're talking now, you know, in April 2016. I know this interview will be up for a lot longer, but what has he got a schedule set up for 2016?
Yes, definitely. Let me just say one thing about meditation, which for me is the sort of connective thread in all types of meditations, which is basically to connect to consciousness by becoming detached from whatever is happening, physically, emotionally, mentally, in all levels. So it's not so much about clearing your mind, because perhaps it's almost impossible, but it's about watching your mind. You know, it's about watching the thoughts, being present to whatever emotions are coming from the thoughts, because we know that, you know, the two different brains that we have in our body work together, meaning we have the possibility to create thoughts that then create emotions, and from that many hormones and chemicals are released from the limbic brain, and it's just being aware of them and not being attached to them, because when you are attached, you become a slave. You know, you go from one thought to the other, you go from one emotion to the other, you go from one worry to the other, and you then connect to the bias of the brain, the negative bias of the brain, and you try to understand and resolve the problem, which then becomes just a mental concept and mental effort, which leads nowhere. So it's basically becoming detached of all that, you know, being observant, you know, just observing what's happening and not being attached. It's very difficult, but it's a thread that links all the types of meditations that I've experienced. In terms of meeting Tony physically in a retreat setting, as I said, there is a monthly session of his School of Meditation. It's called Samara School of Meditation, which we call SOM, which is done or held once a month in Ljubljana, in Slovenia. And it's a session that lasts for 2.5 hours, and people can meet Tony physically, ask some questions, and be in that space of meditation. And then he has the 2.5 day retreats in Portugal, which there is another one coming up in June, and there is one every 3 months, basically 4 times a year, more or less. And all of that is on Tony's website, tonysamara.org. That's TonySamara.com. And you just click on the events page, and you'll have all the events there. Tony also goes a lot to London. He has retreats or events coming up in Belgium, in Holland, and in Croatia. And so there's always a possibility to meet Tony in different settings, and he's always going from one place to the other anyway. So it's not difficult to catch up with him.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Wahido. It's it does give a very good idea of what people can expect from a retreat or from Tony's work. As I said, you've experienced much more of it than I have, and mine goes back. And it was because of the meditation. That's where I came from on the making notes. And it was interesting. You said that Tony did kind of encourage that, because sometimes it's like, how do I actually find the words to the experience? And that's suppose that's where I was coming from on that. With how do you, you know, but it's encouraging for people who do like to take notes. The fact that if they can actually, if they can actually solidify the thought, they can actually write it down.
Yes, I mean, when I mean put down notes is actually not during the meditation itself, but during the breaks, or even when Tony is talking to people. You know, many times he gives steps. You know, gives a step-by-step guideline to something, and so it's important for people to put that down so that they can start. You know, I would even say memorize or sink those words in. But definitely not during the meditation. Otherwise, I think it becomes too mental. You know, what is this thought? What is this emotion? What is this feeling? What is this experience? And then becomes a bit too mental. An experience like meditation for me, it's very deep, and many times it's a whole understanding of it. It's not just mental. It's not just emotional. It's about how the neurons connect in the brain, how the limbic brain processes all those connections and then releases hormones. It's being aware of the physical and the emotional and the energetic. Tony works a lot energetically with people, and so on retreat settings and also beyond retreat settings. But it's a work that you know, it's beyond words, really. It's good to intellectualize experiences, but definitely not during the meditations put down the thoughts or your experiences, or, you know, create notes out of them. Also, Tony always encourages people to have a notebook by the side of their beds, so that you know, eventually, if it happens, to take notes during the night, or to write down your dreams as soon as you wake up. So you know, it's a process that enhances the ability of the mind to understand what's going on.
Yeah, it's this is a, I mean, it's a, for me, it's like showing people how to have a very fulfilling life going forward, because once you really look inside yourself and you understand, and for each one of us, exactly how intricate we are, then it kind of puts anything that's going on externally into perspective. It's like standing beside the ocean, seeing how big the ocean is, and you feel as though you're kind of like an ant. It's like it's that kind of perspective that really your everyday stuff, it's transitory, it comes and it goes, but you've got that connection, that inner connection, which means that you can go through anything and change the things in your life that you don't like, or don't resonate. As soon as you resonate higher, a lot of the things that were annoying or were coming towards you, they disappear, because you're no longer on that vibration. So it's raising your vibration. That's how I see it. And then the kind of the worldly, they don't go away because we're in a material world. That's our contract. But it enables us to get a perspective on it, that this isn't forever. And once you raise your vibration, then it's like oil and water. You won't be able to mix. That's how I see things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the work of Tony Samara, put in a simple way, is helping people find out what they don't understand, and find out the right decisions for their life, so that they can be led to a more conscious way of living. I think there is two main points in our lives: things that we understand, things that we don't understand. The things that we understand, we actually have the choice to put them into practice or not. Like, we know what we should eat, or what we should think, or what sort of behaviors we should engage in, but many times is difficult because of karmic forces or things that are driving us perhaps in an unconscious way, but sometimes in a conscious way. So then it becomes a choice. Okay, I have the choice to think like this, to act like this, to choose this or that. But the problem is when you don't understand things, which means that you don't know what to do, because you don't know what's the right thing to do or what's the more conscious path to choose, and then you try to find the solution. And the problem is our negative bias, which means that the brain always tries to fix the problem, and many times it's not about fixing the problem, but it's being receptive to a different way of addressing your life. Instead of focusing on the problem, you open yourself to answers that can be given to you in different ways. You meet people in the streets, you read something that inspires you or gives you an insight, and you meet a spiritual teacher that then guides you to think in different ways. And so to be receptive is when nothing is automatic, of course, but for me is when the spiritual teacher can appear to you and say, look, perhaps this is a more, like you said, suggesting perhaps this is a more conscious way of looking at things. And then you say, oh, yeah. But nevertheless, it requires trust. And without trust, even if the spiritual teacher suggests something that you resonate with, you need to trust. And this is where people speak about quantum leaps in consciousness. When even though you see a cliff, you are invited to give the step towards it. And your mind doesn't understand. You think you're going to just die, you're going to fall, you're going to break your neck, but then suddenly you realize that the cliff was actually not a cliff. It was actually solid ground, and you just keep walking, and suddenly there's sand, and there's a beach, and there is the sea, and behind you there is forest, and all the elements are together, just because you gave that leap of faith, because you trusted. So this is what many times I hear spiritual teachers say, especially Tony. Being part of the truth is being part of trust, and trusting that whatever happens is for a good reason, and it's for teaching you something. What the problem is that the mind doesn't understand this. Doesn't see the future. Many times doesn't understand the past. Definitely doesn't understand the present moment. And so we are in this limbo, walking in a path that we don't know where it's going to lead, and we cannot even trust ourselves because we made so many mistakes in the past. We are afraid to make the same mistakes. We are afraid to be rejected. We are afraid to not be loved. We are afraid to be in pain and suffering for the rest of our lives. And so we need to trust something. And this is where the spiritual teacher comes, gives you a bit more of this sense of trust, and it asks you to trust even more, not only in the spiritual master, but in life itself. And so this is how I would put...
Trust is such an important issue because, I think that's where people feel that they're alone on this earth, that they have no one, nothing, and they have to battle through until they die, and then it's kind of all taken away. And I think if you haven't got anything to trust in, I think that's a very lonely place to be.
Exactly. And my issue with myself, and the issue that I see in many people around me, is that the main thing that people trust is their mind, is their thoughts, is their own way of what is the right word?
Perceiving.
Sorry? Perceiving, the right way to perceive things. And so they many times, because of the ego and the karma, they are not open to new ways. And so this is where the spiritual master comes in and says, listen, this is possible. This is just another way of seeing things, but it's okay. It's about trusting. And then people slowly open themselves and are receptive to a different way of dealing with life. But in essence, and this is what many people understand when they meet Tony and go especially to their retreats, they really understand that we are not alone. And whatever happens cannot be a sense of trusting the mind. And the trust needs to come from a deeper space. It's a space that's, like I said, comes from meditation, that comes from a space that enhances the abilities of the whole being receptive, and becomes a trust in everything that surrounds your being, not just the mind. And so this is why, you know, having a healthy diet, a healthy way of working, a healthy way of perceiving the world, good thoughts, good feelings, good peer groups, it's so vital. And then becomes an inner quest. It's not just so much how to perceive reality in a mental way, but it's a whole mechanism of how the body, the mind, the spirit functions, so that it brings you to more consciousness.
It's I could talk to you for hours, but I know we don't have hours. I think we've given a really good idea about what will happen on with Tony's retreats, and I do recommend trying them. And even if you first try the online ones, it's well worth just the experience to see how it makes you feel afterwards.
Exactly.
But it's I think it's I mean, I know that they were very powerful for me personally, and I've been on a number of them. I think about two. I think I've been about three, both in Australia and Portugal, and they were fascinating. And there wasn't a sense of competition or anything. You're just there. It's just being and learning, and it's yeah, it is life. It's life changing. So Wahido, thank you so much for your time today to explain a bit more about well, a lot more about the way Tony works and what you can expect from retreats.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's really nice. Always nice to talk to you. Now,
let's talk to you always.
Thank you. As Wahido says, Tony's website is tonysamara.org. You can find out lots of things about his events and everything on there. And, you know, what's the email address, just in case people would like to send in queries or questions to be answered?
Sure. The email is info@tonysamara.org. So it's very straightforward.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Okay, so Tony is an author on Soulfully Connecting as well. So there's lots of his wisdom on there. And the Soulfully Connecting website is www.soulfully-connecting.com. So you can always read up about things that Tony has addressed on there as well. In the meantime, it's so goodbye from myself and from Wahido.
Thank you. See you next time.
Okay, and it's been nice spending this time with you. And it's bye for now.